So if you're feeling stuck on the weight you're using during your training sessions, what if I told you, if you focused more on your form and the execution of your technique, you could see much better gains than if you were to just focus on extreme weights or weights themselves. So we recently covered why lifting heavier isn't always necessarily better, and in this video we're going to look at practical approaches to actually using these principles to better optimize your gains. If we haven't met before, what's up? I'm Lockie, a final year sport and exercise science student at Oxford Brookes University. With years of resistance training and lifting experience, I know that lifting heavy isn't necessarily the best way to gain muscle. It's more about how you get to the heavier weights. So if you're sick of plateaus and injuries when you're using heavier weights, stick around for some valuable insights. Let's jump into it. So in this video, I'll demonstrate how to lift effectively without sacrificing form. We'll apply the principles from our last Science Saturday video on lifting heavy, and I'll show you how controlled movements can lead to better muscle engagement and overall gains. So first, let's tackle the myth that lifting heavy is the only way to grow significant muscle. So you can see in this set, I'm using a moderate weight, not extremely heavy weights, because it's crucial to engage your muscles fully instead of just lifting the heaviest weight possible. So for this particular exercise, to engage your muscles fully, you need to focus on your form, engage your core, and keep your back straight. Also allowing yourself to get a really deep stretch at the bottom of the movement and an explosive, strong, concentric or pushing part of the movement. This ensures that you're actually maximizing muscle activation instead of just risking extreme injury with heavier weights. But then with this exercise, you want to allow an extremely good stretch. So you do that by keeping your shoulders depressed, so keeping them down so you can feel your lats come out, but also allowing your shoulder to come forward so you can get a really deep stretch on the lats. Right, so let's look at what actually happens when I try and lift too heavy for my body to handle. And now a great exercise to show this is the chest fly. So as you can see, obviously this weight I'm using now is the perfect weight for me. It allows me to get a really deep stretch, a fast, explosive contraction, but also controlling the movement the whole time. But then we look at me doing a heavier weight that I can't necessarily control. I can't get a good stretch because I can't bring the weight all the way back. I can't get a good contraction because I cannot fully complete the movement because the weight's too heavy. But then also I have some major form imperfections where my shoulders start to roll forward, and that also starts to take off some of the tension from the chest. So we've covered the myths of lifting too heavy and what lifting too heavy might look like for certain exercises. But let's start discussing some alternatives to lifting heavy and how you can actually apply them to the exercises you're using. And the exercise I'm going to use as an example is the machine chest press. One thing to note is that for this machine, I've pushed the back pad as far forward as it can be. That's to make sure I can get a really good stretch, but a very important caveat to that is you want to make sure with a light weight that you can push forward, come all the way back and relieve yourself of the weight without hurting yourself. That can be a very big issue. People stack the weight on with the machine and then they get stuck here, particularly on machines like this, where you might have joints that aren't as mobile or you're in an injury, so you can't necessarily bail the weight as easy. So it's very important to test that out first. But I've done that, so then let's speak about what to actually do for your working sets. So instead of maxing out, I'm going to focus on the controlled tempo of the rep. So I'm going to perform this chest press with a 4-second lowering phase and a 2-second press. So you can see this in action now. I'm pressing for 1 to 2 seconds, doing a roughly 4-second lowering phase, holding the stretch, and then same again. I repeat that process. Using this rep tempo method keeps tension on the muscles for longer, which enhances the engagement and ultimately muscle growth. So using that 2 to 8 second rep tempo is extremely important for muscle growth. It doesn't necessarily matter where the times come from, but ideally you want to be aiming for the eccentric portion or the lowering portion of the movement to be longer, potentially double the amount of time than the pushing or the concentric contraction phase. So in that example I just said, it was a 2-second concentric contraction, but a 4-second eccentric contraction. But obviously, as you get to the last few reps of your set, that involuntary reduction of rep tempo will start to come into play. So that's where you start to forget about it because your reps can potentially become longer than the time you originally planned. So now that you've seen the actual impact of using too much weight on muscle engagement and form, let's recap the strategies we've discussed today in case you've missed some. So the main takeaway is really simple. You need to focus on controlled movements and proper form instead of just how much you can lift. This approach is not only safer, but will ultimately lead to better results over time. So remember, lifting super heavy weights isn't the only or even best way to build muscle. You want to maintain proper form, keep engagement on the muscle throughout the whole range of motion, and select proper weights that actively challenge you, but also induce an involuntary reduction in rep tempo. Using all of these methods will help to optimize your resistance training growth. So if you've tried focusing on form over weight, let me know your experiences in the comments, and if you have any issues with them, ask some questions I'll be happy to answer in the comments. If you want to know more of the science on why lifting too heavy can be bad for your gains, check out my most recent Science Saturday video. It will explain in depth how it can negatively impact your gains and how you can change your approach to optimize your muscle growth. As always, if you want to keep seeing videos like this, make sure you hit the subscribe button and turn on post notifications so you get a ping every time I post a video. And if you like this video in particular, let me know by giving a comment or smashing the thumbs up button. It really helps. That's everything from me today. Thanks for watching, and as always, I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.